Congressman Mo Brooks represents the state of Alabama. He was an eyewitness to today's attack, right in the middle of it, and he joins us now. Congressman Brooks, thank you for coming on tonight. So set the scene for us. You were practicing, and then what happened?
Well, I was on the third base side of home plate. We had a batting cage, which has a cover on it to prevent foul balls from leaving the field. And I was swinging 2 or 3 bats to warm up. I was on deck. Congressman Rodney Davis was actually hitting. A fellow by the name of Will Batson, who's from the Tennessee Valley, my congressional district, graduated from University of North Alabama, was pitching on the mound. And all of a sudden I hear this loud explosion, a bang. First I thought it was a car backfire or something of that nature. Right. Turned around and then I saw the gun. It was a rifle. I saw the barrel. It was pretty close to the chain link fence, shooting through the holes in the chain link fence. At the time, the shooter was aiming towards shortstop, second base, right field. And it occurred to me that if I could see him, he could see me if he shifted his focus a little bit to his right. That prompted me to realize I was not, I had a baseball bat. That wasn't going to be very good against a rifle.
No.
And I needed to find some kind of cover, so I ran around the batting cage and face first into the ground on the first base side of the batting cage. Or he couldn't see me, but all I had was a plastic shield around the bottom of the batting cage that was preventing him from seeing me.
So how long did this go on?
I thought it was 3 to 5 minutes, but I've seen video that is at least 6 minutes. That suggests to me that the entire event was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 minutes. The number of shots fired, at least 50, maybe as many as 100. I'm sure we'll get a report. Things are happening so fast when you're in that kind of environment. It's very difficult to accurately calculate the passage of time or to keep track of the number of bullets. At some point, there are about 3 or 4 of us lying on the ground near home plate on the first base side of that batting cage where he can't see us, but it's plastic he can shoot through. And it occurred to me, and I imagine it occurred to some of the others, that we would not be in a very good position if the shooter walked around the third base dugout towards home plate. He's on the outside of the fencing, and we'd be lying on the ground with absolutely no defense, 10 to 15 feet away from a guy with a rifle. So we made the collective decision to sprint into the first base dugout. Fortunately, it's recessed a foot and a half, 2 feet, and we were diving in that dugout just as fast as we could. When I got down there, I didn't even remember that it was Jeff Flake's next to me. I was at the far end of the dugout. I was here. Jeff Flake was here. Zach, who got shot, was next to Jeff, and then Coach Roger Williams from Texas, also a congressman, was on his other side. And I said, Zach, you're hit. And, you've been young, teenager, 20s. We didn't think we're kind of immortal. And he said, oh, it's no big deal. And I went, dude, you've been shot. This is a big deal.
Where was he shot, Congressman?
He was shot in the calf. Apparently the bullet had gone all the way through, and he was bleeding. And so I took off my belt and said, look, you've got to have a tourniquet. Reached over there in that direction with the belt. I don't remember, quite frankly, if Jeff took it from me and gave it to Zach, but eventually, with the 3 of us, it got placed on his leg near his knee. And later on, after everything was over with, it looked like he was still wearing that belt to provide a tourniquet to help minimize the blood loss.
That is just remarkable. And very quickly, where was Congressman Scalise during all this?
Well, when I ran to get around behind the batting cage, first thing I heard, simultaneous with the first half dozen shots, taking 2 or 3 seconds, was active shooter, bam, bam, bam. Steve Scalise yelled something. I don't know if it was shooter or I'm hit, but I recognized his voice in that chaos. And then as I'm running around the batting cage, I see Steve on the ground in the second base position on the infield dirt, trying to pull himself on the ground towards right field. And of course, there's not much we can do when all we have are baseball bats and gloves and baseballs, and we're trying to secure ourselves. Fortunately, the shooter did not seem to shoot anymore at Steve Scalise, although he did hit one person, Matt, by a number of times. And one of the other startling moments is I'm on the ground. We've got the tourniquet on Zach. I'm right next to the exit to the dugout where there's only one entrance and exit. We've got a 10-foot fence all the way around this place. And if the shooter gets to that exit, we're all boxed in with no place to go. And I'm lying on the ground eating dugout dirt along with some of my comrades. And all of a sudden, bam, bam, bam. And it was, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, another shooter. I look up, and it was a Capitol Police officer by the name of David Bailey. And he was using the cinder block dugout as a defensive position. And it was a tremendous feeling of joy.
Yes.
To see a good guy shooting back. It seemed like it took forever to engage, but once the engagement took place, our Capitol Police officers were excellent. They were heroic. And if they had not been there, it could have been a massacre because we were pinned inside what was basically a 10-foot fence.
It's I cannot believe you're a U.S. congressman telling me this story, and it's real. The whole thing is totally shocking, even now, all these hours later. Congressman, thank you for your account of that. It's amazing.
Thank you, Tucker.
For more information on what exactly happened, we are joined by Fox News Chicago correspondent Mike Tobin. Hey, Mike.
Hey there, Tucker. Angry little man, pushy little bastard. That's the way one neighbor describes Hodgkinson to our producer on the ground in Belleville, Illinois. It was his way or no way. That's who he was, the neighbor went on to say. Now, Hodgkinson had his run-ins with police. In March of this year, a resident in St. Clair County, Illinois, called the sheriff because Hodgkinson was around his house firing a rifle.
He pointed the rifle towards the center of the timber back there and started shooting across the field, you know, and it was a high-powered rifle. And I thought, good grief, there's houses over there and everything. And I yelled at him. I said, hey, you know, stop shooting over there. There's houses over there and everything. And I didn't get any kind of a notion from him that he heard me or that he even cared.
Now, when the deputy arrived, Hodgkinson produced a valid firearm owner's ID, so the deputy just told him to stop. Now, there's an extensive report from 2006. Apparently, Hodgkinson's daughter went over to a neighbor's house and refused to come home. So over the course of 2 days, according to police records, Hodgkinson went to the house, broke a door, punched a woman in the face, fired a round from his shotgun, hit a guy with the stock from the gun, pulled his daughter to the floor by her hair, attempted to drag her from a car. There were also charges in separate instances, resisting arrest and drunk driving. Now, Hodgkinson also had his political side. He wrote letters to a local paper ranting about taxes, that the rich needed to pay their fair share. His Facebook page is now taken down, but it was riddled with anti-Trump, anti-Republican comments. His page had a big picture of Bernie Sanders with the slogan, Democratic Socialism explained in 3 words, we the people. Senator Sanders reacted.
Let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms.
The Illinois Policy Institute dug up Hodgkinson's voting record. He voted Democrat in 2008, 2012, and 2016. Tucker?
Mike Tobin, thanks for the background. Congressman Roger Williams represents Texas. He's the coach of the Republican baseball team. One of his staffers was shot today, but doctors say he's expected to be all right. Congressman Williams joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on. First, to the man on your staff who was shot, can you give us an update on his condition?
Yeah, Zach Barth was shot in the leg, as you heard from Congressman Brooks. He's doing great. We've got his father up from Houston tonight to be with him. He just got released from the hospital, so he's doing well, and our prayers are answered that he's made it through this, and we're happy for that.
How old is Zach Barth?
Zach is probably about 25 years old, University of Texas graduate, works in my office, does a really good job.
That's just unbelievable. Now, there was security at the scene with the members there, but I can't imagine it ever occurred to you something like this could actually happen.
No, you know, we've been playing out there for, well, at least since I've been in Congress in 2012. We've been out there every morning at 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock. Never thought about anything like this happening, and of course when it happened today, I was over there hitting, I was on the third base side by the batting cage, hitting ground balls to Trent Kelly, and not knowing that this shooter I was probably 20 feet, 20 yards just away from this fella. And when I hit my last ball to Kelly, I went around and started hitting to Steve Scalise. And when I hit my first fungo bat or ball to Steve, the shots went off. And I, like Mo Brooks, thought it was probably a car backfiring, but then they started coming at such great pace that everybody yelled, he's a shooter, he's got a gun, take cover. And naturally, I just charged toward the first base dugout, which actually is about probably 6 feet deep in the ground. If it hadn't been 6 foot deep in the ground and flat, it would have been a whole different story. But I literally myself, I just dove into the concrete dugout. I tore my leg up, but when I landed, I was there with Flake and I was there with Mo, and then all of a sudden Zach comes in from the outfield, running in from the outfield, and he just jumps right into. I'm holding him all of a sudden. We're holding each other. He's bleeding, and that's when Mo and gave the belt to us to make a tourniquet to keep the blood down, and we just held on. And we, but it was a moment that I'll tell you, as we've already said, without the Capitol Police, without the bravery of these Capitol Police, I think that probably it would have been a good chance all of us would have been killed. And the other thing was the third base side, he tried to get in the field. The third base side gate was locked. If it had not been locked, he could have just come into the field.
You must have been completely confused when this happened.
Well, it happened so quick, but it was long. It seemed like it went forever. And I've read reports that it was probably 60 rounds. And it was a time before we could hear friendly fire. I remember Jeff Flake and I were just totally together. And the shots were coming just one after one. And finally, I looked up. Where I looked up, I could see the Capitol Police were standing right above the dugout, and they started firing. And we were yelling, "Is that our fire? Is that our fire?" And then shortly thereafter, it got quiet. But none of us were sure it was over yet. But then the Capitol Police got us and put us in a staging area to make sure everybody was safe. And the rest is history. It's a sad moment for our country. But the baseball game must be played tomorrow. I talked to Speaker Ryan along with Congressman Barton and Dole. We need to play that baseball game tomorrow and let these people know that they just can't change the way we live in this country.
Amen. You'll have more people watching that than ever before. Congressman, thank you for coming on tonight and telling us what you saw, and I'm glad your staffer's okay.
Thank you, Tucker.